I actually enjoy taking part in social media, although there's times I'd prefer to drive a sledgehammer through the front of the computer and have the internet unhooked from the house. In my last video, I gave predictions on the grain market based off of data points, based off of events. Those are opinions as to what I think will happen. It may or may not be true. As to the events that did happen, or the events that caused certain things to happen, there is no debate. It is exactly what took place and what the outcome was. If you got drunk, felt stupid, poured gasoline all over yourself, then lit yourself on fire, and I explained what happened and how you had to go through skin grafts, there is no debate. We could debate that alcohol is not good for judgment, but when you say exactly what happened and it was a poor judgment call, then there's no debate. You see my point? With that being said, we'll dive into the next video, which will be in addition to the last video, or the series of videos that I've done on grain marketing, including recapping several previous videos. We'll try to condense this into a shorter but to the point video. As I've shown multiple times on this channel here, the Iowa State, they record all the history of average cash grain closing prices that you received over the years. It's very easy to go through. You can tell what's going on. You compare this with dollar indexes, other things, economic things, whatever. Do your own comparisons, your own data. Bottom line is we went from 1970 to 1974 for this example. And over that period of time, we came up with a $1.63 average on corn. So we went in and did 100 bushel per acre to $1.63. Now, where did I get 100 bushel an acre? Again, we went back to the USDA website. We can show actual and trend line yields. You know, we can show data points here. We come in here to the 1970 range, 70 to 76 range. We're right in here. We're touching on the line of 100, maybe a little over by 76, maybe a little under, right in there. We're averaging around 100 bushel an acre. We took that 100 bushel an acre times the 5-year average there at the price, $163 an acre gross, and now we've got $11.44 for it by modern day. How did I get that number? We went to the inflation calculator. The inflation calculator, again, these are all over the internet. You can plug that in. $1.63 comes out modern day of $11.14 a bushel. Anyway, you can take that $11.14 a bushel, you can take it in here, you can figure what that'd be modern day. So in other words, you're grossing $1,114 equivalent in modern day, $1,114 an acre. Now, I wanted to go back through and say, well, $1,114 an acre during that 5-year time period, what would that be modern day? Well, if you got 5 bushel to acre, or $5 to the bushel corn, you'd have to get 222 bushel an acre to equal what you did in 1970s there. Or 350 corn. Now, where did I get 350 corn? That's what we're getting for an average from the years of 2015, 2019 as a calendar year average. Now, obviously, most people don't hit the high every single time, although they'd like to. But as an average, you got about 350 corn there for 5 years. So you'd have to get 318 bushel an acre modern day to equal what you did during those 5 years of 70 through 74. So we already showed this index. You know, this is going to be what your yields were. We've explained in the last videos how we falsify. We've shown this 5-year level. Now, this is nationwide yields. You can go in, at least if you're in Iowa, and you can check your per county yield too. Now, as per county yield, now this may not be your farm in specific, but as a whole, or as a nation, our yields have not really increased. They've kind of leveled out, but our costs have continued to go on up. So if you look at the yields, we have not went on up. Now, obviously, that means you were making more in the 1970s, 70 through 74, than you're making right now. Because, I mean, you look at this number, and if this was for our area, I mean, our last county yield here, and it's easy to look it up. Anybody can bullshit as they want to, but our last county yield is like 176 bushel an acre. And you can take 176 bushel an acre times the cash price, what it was for 5 years, at 350. You can figure out where you were versus the 70 through 74. And you guys can go through all these years of data yourself. This is all widely available on the internet. Compare the years, compare it to how you want. Now, how would that rank to machinery? I wanted to find the closest tractor to a modern day 4430 as I could. So what I did is I went in and looked up a 6155M, which is rated 155 PTO engine horsepower and 125 PTO horsepower, and it was available with a 2-wheel drive front axle. So I went down through the options, and I see that they have a power quad, which would be a modern day quad range, which would compare to a 4430, just a little bit upgraded. Now, obviously, the whole tractor's been upgraded some over a 4430, but to pick certain options when you buy a two-wheel drive on your and what we're looking at here is the John Deere configuration website, which will tell you what options you can buy. But anyway, so you get down through these options, and I compared it as close as I could to a 4430. 18438 rears, two-wheel drive, 1116 fronts, push-pull cables to the rear SCVs, two hydraulics, sway blocks, literally 4430. What we came back with was $175,000 list price, plus you're going to have some shipping, plus you're going to have some other things. That's list price, and it's all going on top of the list. So you're probably looking at a cash price, depending upon your dealer, of around $145,000. So $145,000. I went back to the inflation calculator here, entered in 1975, what it would be today, according to the inflation calculator. I compared several inflation calculators. They all came in at the same because they all use a similar indexing fund. At $17,000 price tag, you might have bought a 4430 for a little less than that. You might have bought one for a little more than that, but somewhere in that range, and it'd be modern day equivalent to about $96,000. I didn't want to run the risk of screwing up any math, so I actually went online to a percentage difference calculation of $96,000 versus $145,000. You know, you can take the difference of the two numbers. It comes up with a difference of almost 41%, 40.66% greater price tag for essentially the very closest tractor that we could buy modern day. And again, it's exact same PTO horsepower, similar engine horsepower, similar transmission, front axles, rear axle diameters, quantity of hydraulics, hydraulic flow, all of it's just neck and neck. Tim here says, well, for a guy that believes we are in a continuous downward spiral for commodity prices and net farm income, you certainly have and drive nice farm equipment, even if it's leased. Your payments have got to be through the roof. Carry on. To which I replied to his comment, and he did respond to another comment, stating, good reply, sir. Thank you. I caution you that I am one who will argue with you about the point about leasing costs more effective than buying. If you are farming for the long haul, buying is always better than feeding a lease company. Now, if you're a 3 years gone and done and gone farmer, and you want to buy it and dump it, no time wasted on equipment. Tim, I'm not beating on you here. I just want to share what I believe is going on. You know, anybody can farm with anything they want. I don't give a flying crap, honestly. But for this comparison, what I did is I went through an 8330 2008 model, 15 years old, compared it with a new 8R280. Very similar tractor. I mean, really, they got the same engines, they got the same axle shafts, same three-point hitches, drawbars. I mean, there's a lot of parts that are still carried over on the new one. The new tractor would obviously have 0 hours. Most anything you're going to find is an average. I went through Tractor House, looked, 5,000 hours. So say we put 900 hours per year for our experiment here, and that'd be looking at 4,500 hours. So the tractor, if you leased it in 5 years, this new one's going to have 4,500 hours. The 8330 would be at 9,500 hours, at which point they're probably going to be looking at some extensive work, or at least everything I seem to own blows up. Now, I could care less what anybody does. I don't give a shit. You could farm with a fucking oxen for all I care, and I don't care. I really don't care. What I'm stating here as a demographic whole, and hey, we got old equipment too. We got a lot of old equipment. An 8330, good tractor. I like an 8330, and you guys will have to stay tuned to the channel for just how much I like them. Anyway, 8330 versus a new one. Again, they're going to be the same tractor. So say, for example, if you're going to buy it, and you were going to go out right now, John Deere 775 on finance, it's 20% down to get JDF. They will not lease it over 10 years old. So JDF's going to be 20% down, $32,000 down. Going to give you about $27,600 per year payment for 5 years. Now, at the end of the 5 years, you will own it. However, if you go over to a JDF lease on the brand new one, your lease, depending upon your options. Now, if you neck these neck and neck, I did the comparisons, I did the product builds on them, I looked at Tractor House, compared them all. You're looking at about $28,000 a year. So very much the payment's going to be for 5 years. It's going to be neck and neck. The only difference is going to be that with the new tractor, you're going to have a full warranty, whereas with the used one, you don't have a full warranty. Maybe that used one needs an interior. Maybe it needs a fan drive. Maybe it needs tires the day you put it on there. Those are all in addition to the payment that you're already making. So in a way, your payment for that 5 years is going to be less, unless you just happen to have the cash to just go out and buy that 8330. So if you're going to go out in the market and you need a tractor, in my opinion, as a startup farmer, you're probably more protected with the lease. But again, that could be argued because with the lease, you're not attaining ownership out of the end of 5 years. Now, the buyout on the lease at the end of that 5 years will be about $190,000, or not too far off of where this tractor's at. Now, ironically, the 8330 is selling, or at least what I'm seeing on the internet, almost more than they brought brand new. But $190,000 buyout, 5 years, and you could either lease it again, or you could finance it. And so you could basically kind of like lease it for 5, finance it for 5 or 6, and that'd give you like a 10-year finance. And at the end of the hours, they're going to both be about the same tractor and both be about the same age. The only difference is you might be buying somebody else's used junk, where you could keep it brand new, finance it longer, or finance it less time. In a nutshell, in my opinion, or what I'm trying to do with it, kind of all works out the same. So Tim, I don't disagree with your comment. I actually largely agree with it, that you would be better off just to buy it, and I've probably explained on this platform 50 times that it'd be nicer to just own them and not lease them. But I'll tell you, we wouldn't have them either if we didn't lease them. So if we didn't, we would have all older equipment, and if you couldn't afford this one because you still have to make a similar payment, you can't afford it, the next step down is like a $49.55. And hey, I got a whole shed full of older tractors, and I can name a problem with almost every single one of them. I've had multiple other tractors, and I've never gotten away cheap. I've had some pretty horrific stuff happen to them. Whether that's just bad luck on my part or not, but when you're dealing with 30-plus-year-old equipment, the good luck factor is usually out the drain. And when you're spending, 700 to 800 hours a year on something, I'd prefer to have the modern day comfort. I mean, if I'm gonna make the payment in this versus this, I'm going with the lease. You could go with this. I don't give a shit what you do. Like I say, you could farm with the fucking ox, and if that's the comfort level and all you really want out of life, then by all means, do whatever the hell you want. Now, what I also did is I went back through and I said, okay, well, how much is farming making and how much is the new tractor? So what I did, and again, this is sounding like a broken record because I've already put it on videos before. It's a new tractor of a 8330 back in its day, $160,000 in the lot cash, the brand new 8R280 cash you're buying on the lot. Pretty much, I mean, the finance that's going to be really horrible. So, I mean, you're looking at like $450,000. So you've had a $290,000 increase, or 95% increase in literally 15 years, or an annual rate of gain of 6.3%. And I figured on another quote, I actually showed the quote on our video. It was a continuous gain on that other quote of 6.5%. So 6.5% gain per year. And again, many of those parts are carried over. Many of the things are the exact same tractors. So that tells you a lot about the price and direction of monopolies of the industry. And when the Fed says they want 2% annual rate of inflation gain, are we in line with that? Pretty much not. And I don't see how you could ever argue it. So if you come in here and you start to look at, and that's why I keep saying you have to do more with less, and say for an example you could get a 0% tractor at 5 years paying for it with nothing down, and you just went out and made your annual payment, which won't happen because you're always going to pay interest anyway. 8330 on a 1,000-acre farm equals $32 an acre is what that breaks down to at 160 over 5 years, 0%, $32,000. Very simple, dumbass math there. And the 8R280 would be, a 1,000-acre farm, $450,000 cash price, 0%, 5 years, $90,000 a year, $90 an acre. So in other words, you would have to farm 3,000 acres instead of 1,000 acres to get that payment back down to $30 an acre for that tractor. Or you're going to have a 6.3% gain in commodity prices, or a 6.3%, a gain in yield. You're going to have a gain to equal what the price was going up. And when you start to look again at yields and yield history, going back to this chart, you start to look again at those numbers versus the price of that tractor, and you start to look at the price of everything. we're not gaining. That's why farmers are not buying the amount of iron. And John Deere, when they report company volumes or company earnings, they're not reporting volume. They're reporting earnings, but it's not on volume. Go look up their volume. If you can actually read a multi-page report, especially if you don't know their stocks, on their volumes. Now, where I will get irritated with you, Tim, is where you start to say, believe that we're in an economic decline. There is no belief in it. You are in an economic decline. Let me put it this way. You don't have any subscribers and you don't have any videos. But I'll tell you what. Go get all your grain receipts. Go get all your information. Go do all this shit. And actually put it up on the screen and show that you've actually had such a substantial yield growth per year that you've outrun a 2% inflation rate. Show that you've actually targeted and sold everything in a high month for X amount of years that you've actually exceeded the 2% inflation rate. Because I'll just about guarantee you haven't. Why is it when I put up these videos of heavy equipment, all I get is people like criticizing how I'm running the equipment, how I'm doing it. I don't like the way you rebuilt the tractor. I would have done it this way. But there's actually, if you scroll through my videos, there's actually some videos here where I was looking for workers when we had the excavation business live in full swing. But how come nobody responded to the ad where I'm looking for workers? But they're quickly there to tell you to go fuck yourself and how you do it all wrong. So if I'm doing it all wrong and there's an open door invite and a hell of a pay rate to come in on a career, but you won't take it, I mean, is you just run your mouth? Are you actually going to stick anything behind it? Or are we just being a dumb shit? I mean, it just astounds me how these people can get their fingertips to type this shit on a keyboard, but then they cannot back it up. I mean, their brain had the thought process. It went into their fingertips on the keyboard. So if you have the thought process, then why don't you have the actions? Some more corn statistics here. I'll show you some more. 10 to 14, 537 average corn price. 15 to 20, 350. 20 to 23 so far, 527. In other words, we haven't even returned to as high as the highs we had before. And our dollar's devalued. It's devalued. Period. The reason it's devalued is because you cannot buy the same with what your dollars you did before. Anyway, moving on. In 03, land around here is $18.50 an acre. That same piece of ground, 20 years later, is selling at $98.50 an acre. How do I know? Because we've had freaking fields that are appraised and we've bought for that amount. $8,000 gain in 20 years is 136.75%, or 6.8% per year. Now, this is what I fully believe is wrong with farming and as to why you can no longer hardly make land pay for itself. So if you took corn from 00 to 04 at an average of $2.05 at 155 bushels an acre. Again, you can look up all them statistics. $317.75 per acre. And you start to look at that, and that gives you a per farmable land payment acre, or what your payment was per acre, is about $128 if you had 0% down, leaving you $189 left over to buy your seed, your chemicals, your fertilizer, all that shit. And at that time period, yeah, we could put all that shit in the ground for $189 an acre. Now, I've run this exact same scenario again here just the other day. Do you think those numbers are there? No, they're not. And the reason is because it's 6.8% per year growth. We've shown that farm equipment tractors have went up by 6.5%. So why does everything else not go up by 7%, but your yields never do, or your prices never do? In fact, they are up for 5 years, then down for 5 years, then up for 5 years, and they'll probably be down for 5 years. Now, when standard rate of inflation is 2%, and you go in and you start to look at money factors, cheap interest money. Let's just go on Google. Okay, here's some average interest rates. Blah, 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 blah. Well, hell, money was free. I've already talked about that in the past. This is also why people with money don't explain it to people that don't understand. Anyway, money was free. Bada boom, bada bing. And if you got 6.8%, you're borrowing it for 1 to 3. No problem. Maybe even borrow a mortgage at 5%. The bottom line is, if you're gaining 6.8, you're still outpacing. You're still keeping up with the rate of growth. And you're going to be getting it. So an investor comes in, he buys a chunk of ground. He says, here's a check for it. It's mine now. I'm going to get 5% per year return. Not to mention, I'm going to ride it up for 20 years. And I'm going to sell it for more than I sold it for previously. So it's a wonderful asset from an investor's standpoint. For a farmer paying for it,
he's going down the fucking drain because he's actually getting less for his commodities. Why is he getting less for his commodities? Watch my previous video. I did a study on it right on the website. Potential pace of yield increases. Oh, looks like the chart didn't just go flying off the fucking table, did it? Must be AI. This is all fake. Oh my god, would you look at that. Iowa historical corn yields charts by the Iowa State. Wasting your tax money recording this shit website, but let's use it to our advantage for this video. We can go down through all the different years, starting at 13 going up to 23, depending on which website we go to, and we can see here that some years actually outpaced other years. So if you're in an actual decline, or maybe you haven't had a rate of growth, so what's this take for an example? Here's a county right here. We had 184. We ended 280 or 230. I'm seeing a lot of potential percentages here. Back to our percentage calculator. At the very best county, I could find about a 2% per year growth on yields, and that didn't include our county or many of the others for that fact. In fact, you come in here to our county, you can actually see a decline in yield over the years. So you didn't even keep up with your 2%. And the bottom line is, we just showed tractors, I've shown chemicals, everything else. I mean, we've had a lot of things that went up a hell of a lot more than 2% per year. So you got inflation, but you don't have a rate of growth. I mean, that's like making $10 an hour. Let me back this up. Put it this way. If you were in 1985 and you're making $7.25 an hour, what would you be at today? You'd be fucking broke on the street. So to paraphrase my response to Tim, you're not necessarily wrong about the leases. I don't even disagree with you largely. But where you are wrong is about believing that there's an economic decline in agriculture. Based off the way your comment was written, I don't believe you think that there is one. So if you don't believe that there is one, feel free to contact me personally, or even just write in the comments or make your own video and lay out the data points and show me why you don't think there is. I think the number one point of social media, the number one thing I hate the most, is when you do your homework and you take your time and effort to explain something as to why it is or what happened, and you get an automatic argument. On this social media platform, and mainly others, I get an odd response. I will see all the time, well, you shouldn't buy anything new. The new equipment's the expenditures. That's your problem. And why I don't necessarily, I mean, I agree with that quite a ways. Here's where I don't. It's the same person that will say that, and then, so say for example, it's Facebook. They'll post how they hate the Democrats and how the Democrats are telling us that you're going to own nothing and be happy about it. The hell I will. I'm going to vote for Trump, and I'm going to have a lot of things to my name. Then they'll tell you how you shouldn't buy that new tractor, that new hay baler, or whatever it is. That was the problem. That was the problem with your budget. So basically, they're too stupid to realize that they're doing exactly as they're instructed. You'll own nothing, you'll be happy about it. The fuck I will. But by the way, you shouldn't buy anything because that was your problem. That's where your money went. I'll vote Republican, and that'll take care of the problem. No, it won't. It doesn't matter which side you vote for. It's not going to take care of the problem. Both sides have created a wealth gap. It's just how they obtain the end goal is the difference. It's the exact same mentality of what I just explained about a job interview. I'll come in here and I'll fucking complain about everything you got to say, throw feces all over the fucking place, but I'm not going to do it myself or even participate. Won't even debate. Just yell, scream, and run. I have a neighbor who's a die-hard Republican. And a lot of what he has to say I don't disagree with. But he blames the EPA. It's a lot of these regulations on the farm, blah, blah, blah. It's the EPA's problem. They forget that it was a Republican that started the EPA, Richard Nixon. In my last video, I said it doesn't matter what I say or what kind of content I say. It doesn't matter because getting through to anybody is just next to impossible. And as much hate as I can get out of a tiny viewership of audience, really, I mean, it totally backs that statement up. I mean, if I could get as much blowback as I do in hidden comments and things that YouTube grabs that most of you just don't see, but if I can get that much in a small viewership, then the hope of actually doing what would be right to make the country go in a better direction is hopeless. And I know that, which is why you just learn to watch the signals and capitalize on them. And that's why I make the videos. I don't make the videos to entice or antagonize people. I make it for people that are genuinely interested and have a good correspondence relationship with me. Actually, some of them became good friends that also want to learn things and capitalize themselves. And I do it for local people to maybe expand their minds if they're even willing to hear it, which, again, most of them are not. But if they are, then there might be a few take it to heart and realize that it's not asshole commentary, it's commentary that hopefully makes things better. Kyle here asks, I agree 100% with everything in this video. A topic I'd like to get your perspective on is marketing is playing in the board of futures. There are several guys in the area that play it could care less about the actual raising a crop. I respond to this, and I agree with them. It's something that I'm noticing that's going on as well. And I have not found, when it comes to like banking terms and stuff, I get a little lost. I have to do a lot of research and a lot of hours of reading definitions to try to figure it out. It's so complicated. But I think what is going on was two things. And not again to beat the dead Trump train here, but in 2020, Donald Trump, June 2020, will be under Donald Trump again. Here's another article about banks and the deregulation rules, known as the Volcker rule, gone, which basically gave to your hedge fund management groups and removal of the Dodd-Frank law. Fucking Donald Trump again. Anyway, this is what leads to hedge funds managers, and this is what leads to what I firmly believe as ways of financially fucking us in the fantasy football league that actually is not fantasy football league. It's like a false reality corn casino. And what I mean by that is exactly what he was asking in the comment was, you don't even have to have corn. I swear to God, there could be no corn produced on the face of the earth anymore, but they would still trade it up and down based on maybe a news headline or a certain group wanting to position long or short. Now, it's my understanding as to what happened to the Chicago board. Commodities are a hedge against inflation. So a lot of, we had all this inflation, a lot of hedge funds bought in. And when it became a sideways trade or a commercial trade where only profit taking was the only flare-ups or downs, a lot of these hedge fund managers said, fuck this, I'm going to sell short, which basically means I'm going to get paid on my way out the door, and they crashed the market. In reality, the market actually needed grain, which is why you're seeing a positive basis, and ethanol, at least in our area, western Iowa, ethanol plants are begging for corn. We've had several calls saying, hey, you want to deliver early? We'll pay up whatever we got to do. And the ones I've hauled to have had their doors swinging on the bins. I mean, they're out of grain. They need grain. So the adage of there's no demand, blah blah blah. Well, obviously there's demand. I mean, there wouldn't be local bases positive all over the United States, because even though other areas had a good crop, that doesn't mean that because our area had a bad crop. So that means we're going to start pulling out the areas that had a good crop. But that's demand. I mean, in my opinion, that's demand. So if you got demand, then the board should be going up, and it wasn't, which is why I think there's a lot of hedge fund groups behind the scenes. And look at the size of some of these hedge funds places like BlackRock. And even look at the grain companies such as Cargill or Bunge. I mean, the amount of monopoly and control they have over it's just incredible. You combine those kinds of monopolies and the Glass-Steagall Act, look that one up. That was what separated banks from different, it basically put a definition on it. So if you were a bank, you were a hedge fund group or whatever, late 90s gone. Then you got Donald Trump and they're in the Dodd-Frank law, which is the next protection level for banks, gone, deregulated. And that let these places go run amok. It lets them basically influence markets because they're very large in size, and it's very hard to be in competition with them. It's just next to impossible to start a bank modern day. That's what I think's happened, is the removal of those two laws has now let things go run amok. And that ultimately says that basic fundamentals that support markets are down a toilet, a thing of the past. The financial service industries in this country has been one of the largest growth industries for some time, beating out commodities by quite a bit. What is the financial service industries? Well, in a nutshell, it's banks. And they make a little over 20%. Farmers make 6.9% without government assistance. Now they make more than that based on direct government assistance. And other forms of mining make about 10%. Now, you have to remember those are 10% expenses after paying your CEO big money and everything else, or even 20% after paying your CEO big money. So that's why, at least in my opinion, I believe that the government, the Fed, have such a protection level to the banks. They know it's a large growth industry, or they know it's a big money industry. They know that is your power people at play. You look at J.P. Morgan. I mean, hell, John Deere Financial's largely J.P. Morgan. Anyway, to answer Kyle's question, I think it has a lot to do with the Dodd-Frank law being removed, because it seems like it's gotten really bad lately. And prior to that was the removal of the Glass-Steagall Act. And both of those probably should get put back, or at least in my opinion they should. You know, journalists used to actually have to do journalism. I mean, they actually had to do a little research before they ran a story. Anymore they don't. Most journalists on the internet or on TV are just opinion people. It's like Tucker Carlson. I mean, he rarely actually puts up any facts. He just goes on tirades and whatever the hell he wants to put up. Doesn't really back it up with anything. And most of it, if you actually do your homework, you can chew right through the BS. But anyway, there was an act, I forget the name of it, it was under Bill Clinton. And they wanted, it opened the door for more, it became entertainment. News became entertainment. It opened the door for more freedoms of speech, or that was the idea of it. But when you get a ratings war going on, a network may have more money than another network, because maybe people would rather hear a blowing off bullshit-a-thon than the truth. And I think that that's accurate even on my minuscule channel here, is when I do data points and research, I tend to get no views, but if I just went on a fucking tirade, I tend to get a lot of views. And that truly is a divided and ignorant country. But again, I think that largely got started under Bill Clinton, and it's just blossomed ever since. If you've paid attention to the videos that I've made talking about marketing, thank you. Hopefully you've learned something out of them. If you have anything that needs to be clarified, please contact me directly, or even in the comments below. And if you're here just to argue and they're totally wrong, please, for the love of God, produce your own data. At least take the effort to even try to debate it. Don't just scream and yell and run off. It's pathetic. Anyway, with all this being said, I still think the market's going to keep rallying into June while it's dry. We should at least get back to crop insurance level rate on corn, beans. I'm hearing rallies of close to $16 in June, and I'm hopeful it is. Old crop corn, if you still have it in the bins. Our highest, I think, at our local ethanol plant was 7-Eleven. Now, farther away locations were 7.35. It just depends where you're at. But at 7-Eleven, I think we'll see 7-Eleven at my geographic location. I think I'll see that again, if not knocking off that high, the previous high of 7-Eleven. And I think that'll take place between June till, I originally said July 4th. It may end up getting pushed out a little later, but I still think we'll see it. So if you get a chance, lock in those sales, because I don't think things are looking too great. I think there's going to go through a lull time. The Fed is talking tough talk, even though I think the banking thing's on the edge. The debt ceiling I still think will get passed, but it's going to be in the 11th hour, which affects markets. And just
everything's in a disaster right now. So I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Yeah, thanks again for watching. See you later.